Okay, so I got these all reworked. Now I have to attach them to the servo motors. So there's my little sensor, there's my flag, there's the flag, and there's those 4 little connections coming off the top. So just sort of line these 2 pieces up, and I gotta solder them, which will be very fun and interesting for you guys to be able to see, but I'll try my best. So to start with, I'm going to fill one of the holes on the board, just one. That way I can reheat it so the solder's liquid, push it over the pin, and then let it cool quick while not having to fight the other 4 pins. So there I filled that corner hole all the way through. I can line up those 2 pins, heat this pin, and hopefully it will just set down just like that. Oops, just like that. So this top corner pin is all soldered and finished. I'm just making sure it's nice and flush. Okay. Now it's just standard soldering on the other pins, is just making sure you have to keep the heat on long enough for the solder to wick down the barrel and get around the pin, heat the pin, and make a good joint to the pin on the sensor. So I throw some solder in there. You can't see anything because of the hand. So there, the barrel's full of solder. And I just hold it there for a while to make sure everything's nice and hot. Do it again. So solder, and it's just a waiting game. Solder heats up the barrel on the PCB, it heats up the pin, and then the solder wicks around everything. And the final one. That time I made a bridge. There. A good question beyond your mind is, how long do you need to hold it there? That's based on room temperature, part temperature, solder composition, flux type, everything. The short answer is the longer the better. Usually about 30-40 seconds seems to do it. So now if everything is right, which apparently it's not, that should have caused it to turn off. Ugh. So, time to do some debug. So the board's in good shape. It's blinking like that. That tells me the receiver, so it's the transmit side. It's either the transmit side or I replaced that resistor with the wrong value. One of the two. I'm going to go for the transmit side. Yep. This pin in this top corner is not soldered all the way down. So when I added some more heat and pressed down a bit, the LED went out as expected. Oop. There. So I had a bad solder joint, and there, it's working as expected. So when I block the sensor, the lights come on. Sweet. Mechanically, this is on there pretty good. One plan was to put a piece of heat shrink around this and shrink it down, just to make sure I don't rip these pins out. But I may hold off onto that for a bit. and see how well things hold up. Do a quick test. Yep, all good. And I'll repeat it on this one. The more I think about it, I think I will put the heat shrink on. It's cheap insurance. If I happen to rip the PCB, snag the PCB and rip on it, I don't know if these pins will pull out of the body of that first, or if the pads will pull out of pins out of the body of that first, or the pads out of this guy first. So instead of risking it, I'm just going to heat shrink it and hope for the best. Okay, first things first. I need to put some solder on this board. It's heat soaked all the way to the bottom. I need to block the camera and try and line this all up while reheating that pin. I felt it pop on. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. You heat it up, once the solder melts, the whole card just sort of flopped down into place. So there, I'm just making sure it's all the way down. And now we'll proceed around it, soldering the rest of the pins. Okay. Let's see if I got that put together right. So no light as expected. And I put the flag in and voila. We have a working sensor. And one left over for spare parts. Let's see, what do I have for heat shrink? So this clear stuff is the largest heat shrink I have. I think it might be too big, which is surprising. So heat shrink usually shrinks down about half to a third. So yeah, that's too big. Time to dig deeper. Looks like 1 inch is my next size down. Oh, the only downside with this stuff is it's going to cover up the LED. But can I see it through the heat shrink? Yes, I can. So I'm going to use this stuff. So let's see, how long do I need? And this now brings us to the really easy to screw it all up step. So I need to heat shrink on these rings over the PCB without melting it. The other thing I need to watch is I need to make sure that this heat shrink doesn't get over this top surface. So I need to trim this one down just a little bit. Yeah, that looks about right. Wish me luck. And there we have it. So that gives it some more mechanical strength in that direction. It covers up all the electronics so they don't short out. Downside is I can't repair it, but that's, if I just slit this, this would peel off and then I could access all the electronics again and do any repairs needed. And final test. See if the LED still works. So no LED is expected, and there's the LED. It's a little dimmer. If I really wanted to, I could take a little X-Acto knife and cut a window there, but this is good enough for what I needed to do. So I'm going to do this one quick, and then back over to the other bench where it's easier to set up the camera.